Welcome to the Deep Dive Spirituality Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Brian Russell, and today's episode is a bonus episode of sorts. What follows is going to be the episode 1 of a new podcast that I'm creating with my friend Mark Dunwoody. It's called The Watering Hole, a podcast for coaches. And I'm putting it out as an episode of the Deep Dive Spirituality Conversations podcast for those of you who may be interested in coaching, so that you can check out this podcast in its raw form. Again, I'm going to have a different playlist on my YouTube channel that will host the Watering Hole podcast, and it will also be available wherever you find your audio versions of podcasts. So I hope if you like this episode that you'll go ahead and search out the Watering Hole podcast. You can find links to where it's at on Spotify as well as on YouTube in the show notes. But this is episode 1 where Mark and I talk about the watering hole as a metaphor for coaching. We talk about what coaching is and what coaching has actually done for us. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at brian@brianrussellphd.com. I hope you enjoy this new podcast that, again, I'm co-creating with my friend Mark Dunwoody. Yeah, welcome to the first episode of the Watering Hole Coaching Podcast. I'm Brian Russell, and this is my co-host right next to me or under me, Mark Dunwoody. We started a few years ago during the COVID lockdowns talking about coaching. We got together and sometimes we coached ourselves. We shared best practices. And then after a while, we said, hey, let's start sharing this with the world. So we put together what was for a while like a mastermind group around coaching where folks just came and talked. We used the idea of watering hole, and we decided now to share some of the best insights with you. So we're super grateful for you who are giving this episode a listen. And if you find it helpful, please share it with your friends and with your networks. But Mark, before we go any farther, where did you come up with the idea of calling a coaching podcast and even a group of coaches the watering hole? What's that metaphor mean to you?
Well, actually, it's a theory. It's a theory from a guy called David Thornburg, who's an educational futurist, and he talks about 3 learning spaces we have as human beings. Since the ancients, we have these 3 learning spaces, and one is called the campfire, one is called the cave, and one is called the watering hole. So historically, the cave was a quiet, private space where individuals had a chance to reflect and think and transform knowledge from external knowledge into internal belief, because we transform what's outside of us into inside of ourselves. So that was his idea of what a cave means. The space reminds us that personal, spiritual, and emotional health comes from a healthy balance of retreat and engagement with the world. So the campfire was a space as well for many thousands of years where people gathered to learn from an expert. You know, an expert came to the local village, the local town, and people came there. And also wise elders at the campfire passed down insights through storytelling. Most ancient cultures they passed stories through word of mouth for thousands of years, and they replicated that culture then for the next generation. And that space reminds us as well as the importance of having coaches in their lives. You know, I always say everybody needs a Gandalf in their lives, you know, someone that can speak into your life. And then finally, the watering hole is Thornburg's 3rd space, where he talks about an informal space where peers can share information and discoveries. And they can act as both the learner and the teacher at the same time. And it serves as an incubator for ideas and can promote a sense of shared culture. And I suppose the watering hole came up for me because we were doing that. We were sharing ideas and coaching each other and so on. When COVID struck, you know, the whole world closed down. So me and you, we went to Zoom. I think we met every Friday afternoon for a long time. We had these coaching conversations. We talked about tools and we shared tools. And we thought, why don't we use this with other people? So that's where we built the community over the next year or two. That's the genesis of the watering hole.
Yeah, and the coolest thing about this, where this is a podcast and a video cast, so we can also find this on YouTube if you're not listen, if you want to see what we look like beyond just the audio version of this. But what I've appreciated about this bigger watering hole that we're talking about is this is an international group because I live in the United States. You live in Northern Ireland, and we've been able to actually work with people from all over the world so far. We had folks that came to our kind of our gathering from Africa, from the mainland of Europe, and in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, United States, Canada. So we actually kind of put together a global community. So that's one of the things I hope we are able to continue to do too, is serve people all over the world who are interested in coaching.
Yeah, love that. I mean, I think the premise of coaching is to help people remove barriers to move forward in their lives. And for me, I think what we've done with the water hole is exactly that. So we're democratizing coaching. People could look up your stuff, they could look up my stuff, and they actually would have enough knowledge and tools to get going to be a coach in whatever context they find themselves in. So part of I think what we're doing, we're really disrupting this dusty old world of education and coaching where people think they have to have a qualification, they have to do this. You know, we will be sharing enough tools between all our different things that we do, plus the water hole for anybody to learn how to manage knowledge of themselves and others, the people that they lead.
Yeah, and it's going to be so fun. And I guess
Yeah.
before we get too far ahead of ourselves, if someone's listening and they just wonder, like, what is coaching? You know, and again, we're not talking about sports coaching. We're talking about life coaching, business coaching, personal development coaching. But like, how do you understand coaching, Mark?
Yeah, I think coaching for me is the space to reimagine a problem and reframe it as a question. You know, I actually shared a little video on my social media today where we can, you know, we were born as little babies with a blank sheet and a blank mind, and we gathered all those belief systems and so on through our journey. And sometimes we get stuck in our life because our mind gets stuck. So having someone that can just talk you through and help you gain a new perspective on something is is key. I mean, we have moved from the industrial age to the age of knowledge. So you as a manager, you as a leader, you manage people's knowledge. No one needs to stay with you anymore. You know, we see that with young people. Like if a job doesn't suit a young person, they're out of there. You know, they're different now. We see that in so many organizations. We see, I think, during 2021, there was 47 million Americans voluntarily quit their jobs. People are always quitting jobs. They're moving to new things. They're trying to do different stuff. And the ones who don't, you get stuck with them. So you need to figure out ways that you can manage people's knowledge to help them moving forward. What it isn't counseling. It's not therapy. Coaching is usually future focused. Um, it's you've got coaching and mentoring. Sometimes, you know, some people will say coaching and mentoring is two completely different things. Sometimes it's a bit different for me. I don't know about you, Brian, because if you have a notion and you have knowledge and experience in the subject, when I work with people, I can offer mentoring, but I don't necessarily need to be a mentor for somebody that I don't know anything about. It's pure coaching. So coaching's allowing that space for new possibilities and new ideas to bubble up and a new way of being. And also, we see statistically, and you can Google whatever you like, people who are coached in every walk of life tend to be more fruitful. They just do, you know. So, did I answer your question? I mean, what
Yeah,
would
and
you
that,
add to that? What would you add to
yeah, and
coaching?
everything you said, that's been my experience too. I found as I've opened myself up to coaching, I've been able to become more fruitful, both professionally, personally, and in my spiritual life. And I love what you said. You made that key distinction between therapy and coaching. A way that I like to say is that, like, coaching takes where you are and helps you to get where you want to be. And so we sort of work on the gaps, the blocks, the excuses that sometimes a person makes. So a coach is like a person that comes alongside, and it's like a great sports coach. It's somebody that's unconditionally for you and for the person and the mission that you say that you want to get to. And the coach listens. It's kind of almost like it's almost like a non-equity partner in your personal business. So they're not taking a chunk of your equity, but they're literally serving like a personal board of directors to help you move forward.
Yeah.
I also like the distinction that you made between coaching and mentoring. Again, they're similar. So sometimes a coach, it's all about questions, and we're essentially trying to draw out of our client, the person that we're coaching, the resources that that person actually has that they may not be aware of. I mean, that's sort of classic coaching. And then sometimes, like you said, we could be knowledge experts. I bring a particular set of skills, especially around spiritual formation, spiritual development. And so sometimes it's more like I put on like a consulting hat where I actually bring maybe a system. Certain business coaches do this too. You may have a system that you can share with the business owner. So there can be a teaching part of that relationship too. It just depends on what the client needs. So, like, I know for me, when I think about what is coaching, it's me showing up to be unconditionally for the person that I have the privilege of serving to help that person get to where they say they want to be, or maybe even if we want to make it more spiritual, where they say God is trying to get them
Right.
to. So, I mean, that's all I would add. And again, we can say more, and we will as we develop this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And
So, how did you actually get into coaching, Mark? What's a little bit of
oh,
your story?
great story, or it's a great question. I've, I'm someone who thrives in change. Like I love change. I just love change, um, which drives some people crazy probably in my life. I've lived in 5 different countries and 3 different continents. Um, at the minute, I work in Australia. I live in Ireland. I do work in States, Europe. I coach people in Africa. I love change and I love cultures, how we're all the same, but we're all different. So looking back at my life, I was a very young entrepreneur. So I noticed that I just loved creating something that wasn't yet in the world. So I love bringing new things to the world. And when I talk with people, I make them realize that we all bring something new to the world every single day. If you've a chance to reflect on what you're bringing to the world, for good or bad, you can then have growth and you can actually start to measure and notice the change in your life. So I've done that. I've done massive multi-million dollar projects where I've helped bring something new to the world. I've done things in a 5 minute conversation with people have helped someone bring new insight to the world. So I've probably at this stage, because I'm quite old, probably about 30 years of sort of change management. And I just love working with organizations and individuals. And I think we're at one of the most exciting times in human history for new ways of being. And I think that's why, I don't advertise. People come to me. I tend to give as much knowledge and as much human value to who I can every day. And I just always learn with coaching. I love coaching because it can transform you. Uh, and it's, yeah, so I've done lots of different things and brought new things to the world. And getting to a stage now where lots of things that I come across when I work with folks I've seen before, you know. And I think as well, we just touched on the difference in society now. So the cloak of society is participation, isn't it? It's knowledge. There's less and less. We're coming out of the industrial age where everybody lined up to go into school and sit in rows and workplaces from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, factories. We machines took all over all these jobs, and now we're managing knowledge with people. So that certainty of life, that certainty of what would happen in 5, 10, 15 years is disappearing like snow off a dike. So we see that it's really important to keep reflecting on where you are and what opportunities then you have to grow and change. And I think that's why I love coaching, because it leads to a deep, deep personal transformation. And it's the best gift in the world, just to speak into people's lives, to be part of that journey.
No, it's fantastic. And I can say I got into coaching. I've always been interested in personal development, even when I was a younger professor. But my real moment came in really 2010 when I went essentially through a just an existential crisis. My family fractured. I was literally broke. So I'm relationally fractured, financially fractured, and at that moment, I realized I'm getting this reset that I didn't want, but I had agency and I needed to be really lean in and become the person that I really sensed that God had created me to be. So I went on this just what I call deep dive adventure, and worked with coaches, worked with different programs. I read hundreds of books on personal development, psychology, finances, and I just got all of this knowledge together. Ultimately, I would say to save myself
Yeah,
and
yeah.
for my kids, and then to rebuild build a life. And what was interesting out of that, it made me a better professor, and I started caring for my students at a deeper level. And I started doing, I guess now looking back, I was coaching my students. They were coming to me, and I was able to coach them in my office. And then I began doing group mentoring for students. And then a group of former students of mine said, "Hey, would you coach us?" And so out of that was sort of born the work that I do. I do group coaching for pastors. And then at the same time, an old friend of mine, he used to be a pastor. He's now a very successful business coach. He saw me, he saw that I'd lost a bunch of weight,
Mm-hmm.
said I was a completely different person. And he remembered, he asked me what happened. I told him my story, and he goes, "Hey, do you want to be a business coach?"
Mm-hmm.
And so he invited me to join his firm. And through his mentoring, I've learned not just to coach pastors around kind of spiritual growth, church issues, but I've added this whole piece on how to help small business owners get the freedom that they wanted, which was all purpose of working for yourself. If you don't, if you know, but a lot of people who go into business want freedom, and all they end up doing is handcuffing themselves to some business where they're the only person that does everything. And so my mentor Glenn, he taught me how to help business owners set up systems that increase their return on investment while giving them more time by helping them to build a team around them. And so that's kind of how I got into coaching. So I do one-on-one stuff for both people interested in deeper spirituality, but folks that are, I would say, spiritually minded entrepreneurs. And I do group programs that are primarily aimed at helping pastors to be the type of pastors that really work for the love of God and neighbor in the world. And so I've been, I guess I've been coaching professionally since, by professional, I mean somebody actually paid me for since 2018. So it's coming up on 6 years since I actually had my first paying client. And I love it. It's been life giving. So
Right.
why is coaching, Mark? I mean, you hinted a little bit about what coaching did for you, but like what's so special about coaching, and maybe why would people want a coach for their own lives or their business?
Yeah, I think that's a question I ask myself a lot. And if I had one wish for, like, everybody close to me knows the importance of coaching, my family and good friends, and I've had coaching conversations, and they know the benefits of it. I think in a level in our minds, there's usually a cognitive dissonance between what we think and what we actually know of the world. Um, I think there's a lot of people don't open themselves to change and to being changed. I think you can't innovate perfection. So I would get quite a few people. No, yeah, quite a few people would come to me. We'd have a chat, and I know that they wouldn't be coachable. And that I don't know about you, Brian, but I just don't coach anybody that I don't click with, or that I don't think will be a challenge. There has to be, there has to be, there has to be a problem that needs to be reframed as a question, a willingness to open themselves to something new, and it's incredible when that happens. And coaching is a powerful way of changing your mindset, because our whole world, our world, exists between our ears. Like, what we think of the world and how it's constructed between your ears, and that's how the world is. And if we can change our perspective on one little thing in our life, it can have a knock-on effect. I mean, we'll probably talk about it in more episodes, but you know yourself, like, coaching actually heals the physical body. Coaching heals us emotionally. Coaching heals us spiritually. When we start to understand that there's something off about us emotionally, there's something off about our lives, that has a spiritual and a physical effect on our bodies. And I've seen that with people that I work with. So coaching for me is, we're in a period of change. We're in a period of great disruption. I talk about realistic hope a lot. There's more jobs created than there's ever been. Yes, AI is going to take a lot of jobs, and there's going to be even more jobs created. There's going to be new ways of learning. There, we talked before I come on about a church that I heard started online with a couple of hundred people. It's now at 15,000. So Christianity is growing around the world. If you look at the figures, it's growing. There'll be more and more Christians growing around the world and faith people. There'll be more businesses started, but they're doing it in a different way. They're doing it a different way than it has been before. And I think coaching is one of those things that, yeah, you have to admit, you have to be humble enough to admit you don't know everything. And I think that's one of the most amazing things for me as I work with people. I work with some amazing people, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they're humbling themselves to work with me, and I'm like a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, and if you get that, but if you humble yourself to ask more questions in life, to not take everything for granted, to realize that something could be different. And here's the kicker: to know that you play a part in it. It's not your boss's fault. It's not your spouse's fault. It's not because your parents didn't hug you hard enough when you were young. It's not it's you. You're that person now. You're going to face up tonight. You're going to do the deep work. And that's why it's something I've noticed with coaching. When you coach people for a year, it can take 2 or 3 months before you get into the weeds of what's actually going on. So coaching for me is it's incredible. And I love, I've got a coaching accreditation system. It's all online, and I've been able to train coaches and help coaches start coaching businesses. And it's amazing, and when you can, I talked to someone the other day that I was informally coaching a lady in my family, and she called me to say, oh my gosh, I'm loving work so much. She used to get involved in everybody's dramas at work. She needed to be needed by other people. So she was always involved in dramas. So we went through a spinning hour with her, and we got to underline, well, why do you have to be involved in everybody's drama? Why can't you stay out of it? Why can you not have an opinion? And she's done that for a month, and she feels completely different. She feels physically better, emotionally better, and spiritually better because she's not getting involved in everybody's stuff and fear and anxiety. And we've talked about this before with PQ Intelligence. There's a tool out there. You can Google PQ Intelligence. We both love their stuff and we use it. If something happens to you, you have a choice. You can see it as negative. You can be pessimistic about it. You can see that it's going to be a disaster. You can say blah, 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 blah. Or else you can see it as a new opportunity to learn, to gain new knowledge, and to gain new strength and power. You get to choose. And I think working with a coach, whether you hire a coach or where you just get a couple of friends and say, look, let's coach each other informally, you start to reframe what voice you're playing with, what narrative you're playing with. And again, it can be hard work because you maybe had 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, of people telling you how to think and what to think. So that's a short answer. But
That's
I
good.
love coaching. I'm passionate about coaching, and I'm at a stage in my life where I just love it, and I just see the people who are thriving in life are the people who are open to reframing problems as questions and realizing they play a part in it, whatever's happening.
Yeah, that's so good. And I'll just add a couple things here as we uh, wrap things up. Yeah, for me, why coaching? And you said the word, I love it, thriving and flourishing. And most of us deep down want to thrive and flourish. Ultimately, one of my goals is like I'll be 55 in 2024. Is I'm looking like however long I live, it's like I don't plan on retiring. Again, I plan on retiring from certain activities, but I want to live a life with purpose. So to me, coaching helps people assume the agency that they actually have to create or co-create the future that they really sense they're called to. And a good coach cuts through the baloney that we tell ourselves. I could use a
Yeah,
more colorful word, but I'll just say the baloney and the garbage. And instead, like you hinted at it, I love coaching because I think in coaching, we can help clients turn their obstacles into the actual raw material to get forward. So in other words, we cut through excuses. A good coach can help us see blind spots, parts of ourselves that really aren't serving us, that are actually undercutting who we say we want to be. We help clients and to find their own self limitations that they've put on it. Because, like again, you said the key word is this backdrop of complexity and uncertainty. And great coaching helps people essentially gain self mastery over their time, over their emotions, over their ability to deal with complexity so that when we go into the world, whether you're a pastor, a small business owner, an employee somewhere, so that when you use your words, when you exercise whatever power that you have, it's going to serve the greater good and the greater mission.
Love that.
Yeah.
But
So this is gonna be so fun
yeah,
doing this with you, Mark. And I think we already gave folks a taste of some of the episodes that are coming up. And
yeah,
let me add one other thing. I meant to lead with this on what coaching does. In a nutshell, for me, coaching helps the person being coached to think about their own thinking. I mean, you said something about that. It's like to see what's going on, to step back, take a bigger picture of what's going on so that you can move forward with clear, decisive action.
yeah. I love that. I mean, I led a team in England on a large project a few years ago, and we would do that. Like it can be quite complex, but it actually can be some simple around coaching. If someone had a problem or something, we're stuck in something, we would say to each other, "Can you coach me 5 minutes?" So it was, "What's going on? What would you like to be different? Where would you like to start? And how would you know if you've made progress?" That's it. That's what a lot of coaches will charge you $20,000 for, the big bucks, but that's it. And if you can master those skills for your life, and you can be in that room with that person, and you know that uh, you're not there to be you're not there to answer that person, but you're there to give that person that power. And I think that's what I would add to what coaching is. We live in a society where so many people want to take your power. They want to take your power and sell you something or tell you who you are or whatever. With coaching, with a good coach, you own your power.
Yes.
You own your own power, and you find out who you are. And I've worked with people who are in later stages of life who are only starting to begin to understand who they are. They're not um, living the script now of what society has told them who they are, their church or their business or their even relationships. So it's just it's an amazing, I don't know, what would we call it, tool, methodology, uh, um, mindset, but just to have someone in your life that would just ask you questions about yourself and just help you change your perception and something. It's magic. It's a blessing.
Indeed, and I think that little basic coaching framework that can be one of our first episodes. So
Yeah,
watch for
let's do
that
that.
one in coming weeks. And I would just say to everybody listening too, like everything, just to even summarize what Mark said. Everybody listening, whether you're a young person or whether you're a seasoned elder, you're never too young, you're never too old to become the person you were created to be. And coaching is one of the modalities that both Mark and I have found that helps us to step into those spaces. And with the watering hole, we're hoping that this can add value to you so you can get to that place as well.
Yeah, that's great, Brian. So yeah, that's our first episode. That's exciting, and it's primarily for anybody who wants to learn about how to learn more about coaching and how to manage change in their own lives and people they lead and so on. But we're very aware of the watering hole community that we have and we love. Um, so yeah, it's just through this podcast, our dream is that coaching becomes more and more mainstream, and people use that uh, way of coaching to lead change, and it brings health, and it helps people be healthy spiritually, physically, emotionally healthy. Because we can do that, then we can change one person's life. We can change their family's life. We can change their social. So we can start to make change in the world and help people deal with change and approach change with the posture of a realistic hope.
I'm in, Mark. I think we probably put a pin on this episode, and
Yeah.
we'll have contact information in the show notes. Again, if you found it helpful, please subscribe, share it with friends. If you have coaching questions, either add them to the comments wherever you're listening, or you can send them to the information that you have in the show notes. And so, thanks, Mark, and this will be fun. And look forward to our next episode.
Thanks, Brian. Take care. God bless.